That afternoon, I came back from the market and thinking about how peaceful the house is, since my daughter Laura moved back in after her divorce. For a moment, I thought maybe we had found each other again. Then, as I set the groceries down by the door, Laura appeared, 2 suitcases already packed, a few bills in her hand. She said, "Mom, it's time for you to go. You've already signed everything. This house belongs to me now. Here's $300. You'll manage a few nights at a motel." My breath caught. The words sliced through me colder than any winter wind. My house? The one I built after my husband Robert died? The one I paid for brick by brick? The one where every corner still carried my sacrifices? I gripped the counter to steady myself, questions screaming in my head. When did love become a contract? When did my daughter become a stranger? My name is Margaret Sullivan. I'm 67 years old, a widow in Texas who once ran a bakery for 4 decades. And that was the moment I stopped being just a mother and became a survivor. And the truth is, that moment on the porch wasn't the beginning. The trap had been set long before. The late afternoon sun striped the kitchen table as we sat across from each other. Steam curled gently from the jasmine tea my daughter Laura had brewed, untouched in our cups. "I didn't add sugar," Laura said without looking up from her phone. "You said sugar makes your joints ache." I nodded, fingers brushing the edge of the cup. "You remembered, sweetheart." "Of course I did." She smiled faintly, still scrolling. "Mom, have you given any more thought to selling the house?" I blinked. "Selling?" "I thought we were just talking hypothetically." "We were," she said, setting her phone down. "But if you're not going to live here much longer, it's a big space to leave empty." "The senior condo I showed you has a yoga room and heated floors." I tried to laugh. "I need to learn how to stand up without grabbing the counter before I attempt yoga." "There's no need to be sarcastic, Mom." I wasn't. Laura picked up her cup but didn't drink. "You always said you wanted more freedom." "Fewer responsibilities." "There, you'd have both. I thought this house was freedom." She didn't answer that. Just stared at me for a second, then placed her cup down, gently but firmly. "Look, you've sold the bakery. You're entering a new phase. It's time to plan accordingly." My eyes drifted toward the old apron still hanging by the pantry. Off-white now, stained with years of vanilla and buttercream. "You never really cared about the bakery," I said softly. "But there were days I stood on my feet for 10 hours straight, just to redo a wedding cake because the bride gave the wrong date. I didn't want anyone to be disappointed." Laura stood and opened the kitchen window. A breeze swept in, flipping pages on the wall calendar. My birthday last month was still circled in red. No one had mentioned it. For a moment, everything was still. Then she turned and laid a folder down in front of me. "I want you to come with me to meet with a financial advisor," she said casually. I looked at the folder. "A lawyer?" "Technically, yes. But it's just estate planning. Nothing scary. It's about avoiding probate tax, keeping everything within the family." "I thought everything was, already mine." "It is," she said quickly. "This is just paperwork. To make sure things are clear, no surprises down the road, and I'm giving it to..." "Who?" "To someone you trust." She looked at me. Me. Outside, the wind caught the curtains, lifting them like sails. The calendar kept fluttering, like time itself was slipping. "I've got guests for dinner tonight," Laura said, walking to the stairs. "Eat early, okay?" "I'll clean up before they arrive." She didn't wait for a reply. I stared at the folder. Inside were pages that would change everything. The morning light slanted through the blinds. Laura set down a heavy folder. The house felt too still. "Mom, I talked to a financial advisor." "We should start estate planning," she said, her tone soft, measured. She folded her hands neatly on the folder, as if to signal control. My eyes dropped to the papers. So organized, so rehearsed. I wondered when my daughter started preparing conversations with me like boardroom meetings instead of kitchen talks. "Estate planning?" I asked. "I thought that's what we did years ago with your father's lawyer." Laura leaned forward, eyes steady. "That was just a will. This is different. If we transfer ownership now, you won't have to worry about inheritance tax or probate courts. It makes things easier. Cleaner. For whom?" In my chest, something tightened. "But Laura," I said carefully, "this house is mine." She smiled quickly. "And it still will be yours." "Only on paper. It shifts to me. That way, if anything happens, we avoid legal mess. Her words echoed, "If anything happens." She spoke like she was already imagining me gone. My throat dried. "Why now?" I asked. "Why is this suddenly urgent?" She sighed, rehearsed exasperation. "Because I gave up my job to stay here to help you." "My life is on hold, Mom. All I'm asking is that we protect what you and Dad built." For both of us, I studied her face. The face I once kissed after scraped knees, now tight with calculation. Since when did gratitude sound like a debt I owed? "I never asked you to give up your job," I said quietly. "You didn't have to," she shot back. "Someone had to step in." "You can't handle everything alone." Alone. The word sank into me like a stone. When had she decided I was incapable? Was it the time I forgot to lock the garage? Or when I asked her to help set up online banking? Since when had every small lapse turned into proof that I was fading? "Laura, I've managed this house for decades," I said, my voice trembling with both pride and fear. "Through your father's illness, through the bakery's worst years." "I am not helpless." She softened her tone again, that pendulum swing I was starting to notice. "I know, Mom. But this is about security, for all of us. Don't you want me safe too?" Her eyes searched mine. A question that wasn't a question. If I said no, I was selfish. If I said yes, I surrendered. I hesitated. And in that hesitation, she placed a pen in my hand. "Do you trust me?" she asked. Trust. The one currency I had never questioned with her. I thought of birthdays forgotten, conversations cut short, dinners where she stared at her phone instead of me. Little cracks, all leading here. I wanted to believe the little girl who once crawled into my bed during thunderstorms was still inside this woman. So I signed. Not because I believed the words on the page. Not because I understood, but because doubting her felt like a betrayal worse than the paper itself. And in that moment, I didn't yet realize the true betrayal had already begun. The grocery bags cut into my fingers as I walked up the porch. 2 loaves of bread, a carton of milk, and chicken for soup. The same kind of dinner I'd made for decades. I typed in the door code. Beep. Red. I tried again. Beep. Access denied. A chill ran through me. Before I could knock, the garage door slid open. Laura stepped out, her hair pulled back tight, her blouse pressed sharp. Beside her, 2 suitcases. Mine. "Mom," she said, voice steady, rehearsed. "We need to talk." The plastic bag slipped from my hands. An apple rolled down the steps. Why are my bags packed?" She didn't flinch. "Because it's time." "You've signed the transfer." "This house is in my name now." I blinked at her. "Laura, this is my home. I built it with your father. I raised you here." She folded her arms, eyes narrowing. "And I'll raise my future here." "You'll be fine." Her words hit like a door slamming in my chest. Fine. That's what my life was worth now? Fine. I shook my head, voice trembling. How can you say that to me? After everything you what? She cut in, sharp as glass. Baked bread? Cooked dinner? Kept the lights on? You were just the support act, Mom. Dad built the money. I'm the one building the future. The words sliced deeper than any eviction notice. I'm not a guest here, I whispered. I'm your mother. Laura's mask slipped. Her voice rose, venom laced in every syllable. Mother? You stopped being that years ago. You're old, helpless, a burden I've carried long enough. Do you understand me? A burden. My knees weakened, but she pressed on. She shoved an envelope into my hand, $300 in cash. This should cover a few nights at the Sunset Inn. I stood frozen, but she wasn't done. With a flick of her wrist, she held up my bank card, already sliced in two. You won't be needing this anymore. All the accounts are under my management now. Less chance for you to embarrass yourself. Tears stung my eyes. Embarrass myself? Laura, I kept this family alive. I worked until my bones ached so you could stand here now. She sneered, leaning closer, her voice cold and final. And now you're nothing. Just dead weight. I'm done carrying you. Get out. Headlights swept across the driveway as the Uber pulled in. Laura waved impatiently, like dismissing trash pickup. Your ride's here. Don't make me say it again. I stumbled toward the car, clutching my 2 suitcases, the envelope, the broken card. As the driver closed the door, I looked back. The porch swing, the roses Robert planted, the windows I washed every spring, all of it faded in the rearview mirror. The house glowed in the sunset like a shrine I'd been exiled from. And in that moment, one truth cut deeper than her words. 40 years of sacrifice reduced to 2 suitcases, $300, and a daughter who saw me as nothing more than dead weight. The Sunset Inn was $29 a night, $29 for a room that smelled like mildew, with a mattress that dipped in the middle and a heater that rattled louder than my heartbeat. I sat on the edge of that sagging bed, my 2 suitcases at my feet, the envelope with $300 in my lap. 40 years of my life, and this was what I had left. I ran my hand across the rough bedspread. The fabric scratched like sandpaper. It reminded me of the times I'd buy secondhand clothes for Laura when she was little. Too rough, too worn, but I washed them twice, sometimes 3 times, so she wouldn't notice. Back then, I would have taken the scratch myself 1,000 times over if it meant she felt soft and safe. Now here I was, 67 years old, staring at a ceiling stained yellow, listening to the baby crying in the next room, wondering how my own child could put me here. I pressed my palms together to stop them shaking. All my life, I worked so she would never have to feel this way, never have to feel small, cheap, disposable. And yet here I was. And in the silence of that motel room, memory came flooding back. The smell of yeast and sugar, the rhythm of mixers, the sound of a bell above a bakery door. I spent 40 years inside a kitchen no bigger than a 1-car garage, the ovens lined up against the brick wall, 3 mixers that never stopped humming, and a chalkboard by the register where I scribbled the daily specials in crooked handwriting. Every morning, I woke at 4:15 a.m. Not once did I hit snooze. By 5 o'clock, I was unlocking the bakery door on Main Street, the smell of yeast greeting me like an old friend. I'd baked 200 cinnamon rolls, 50 loaves of sourdough, and at least a dozen cakes before the sun had fully risen. I told myself it was worth it. Every aching joint, every holiday missed. Robert died when he was 52, his heart giving out faster than the ambulance could arrive. We had $3,800 left in our joint account. A funeral cost nearly half of it. The rest had to stretch. Laura was only 15, braces on her teeth, a prom she'd cry over if I couldn't pay for, so I built a business from scratch. Flour, sugar, coffee, and grief. I priced cinnamon rolls at 99 cents so families could afford them. I made birthday cakes for half price if the parents whispered to me that they were struggling. People called me the bakery queen. I laughed when they did, but secretly, it kept me standing. That crown wasn't made of jewels. It was made of customer loyalty, handwritten thank you notes taped to the fridge, and a line of children pressing their noses against the glass case every Saturday morning. And somehow, the years stacked up like tiers of a wedding cake, one layer after another until 40 years had passed. When I finally sold the bakery last year, the buyer wired $5 million to my account. I stared at the numbers on the screen until they blurred. I thought, this is it. This is what security feels like. No more 4 a.m. alarms, no more swollen knees, no more worrying if I had enough butter to last the weekend rush. I imagined a quiet retirement, maybe a painting class at the community center, maybe travel if I was brave enough. Mostly I wanted time to just sit on the porch and not be waiting for an oven timer to beep. And then Laura moved back in. After her divorce, I welcomed her with open arms. She set her laptop on the dining table, filled the house with the smell of her perfume, and for a while it felt like I'd gotten my little girl back. We drank tea at night, laughed about neighbors. I told myself this is the reward for all those years kneading dough. But closeness isn't connection. I noticed it in the small things. She never touched the framed photo of me in the bakery. She scrolled her phone through dinner. She started calling the house the property. She used words like equity instead of home. Since when did we stop speaking the same language? Now, when she puts legal papers in front of me, I see the distance written in black and white. A daughter who once lived on the smell of my bread now tells me bread doesn't matter, only signatures do. And as I sit here, I think, I gave her 40 years, 200,000 cinnamon rolls, one business, one life, and she gave me this, a folder, a pen, 2 suitcases, and a future that no longer feels like mine. The light in the motel room flickered every few minutes, buzzing faintly above my head. I sat at the small desk by the window, the kind of desk that still carried scratches from strangers long gone. My suitcase lay open on the bed behind me. Buried between folded sweaters was an old leather ledger I hadn't touched in years. I pulled it out. My fingers shook as I traced the handwriting inside. The last entry I'd made was dated April 2004. Cinnamon roll sales, $198.25. Even now, the slanted letters looked the same. Back then, I wrote down every penny. Old habits die hard. I spread the ledger across the desk, beside a folder of bank statements I had grabbed in a hurry when I packed. The crumpled envelope of $300 Laura had handed me sat on top like an insult. My mind kept circling back to Robert's voice. I could still hear him the night we signed the papers for the house. "You'll never lose this place, Margaret." Not while my name's on the deed. He had looked me in the eye when he said it, and he never broke his word. But if that was true, then Laura was lying. I flipped through the bank statements, line after line of neat columns. My eyes stopped cold. March 12th, wire transfer, $75,000. March 27th, withdrawal, $20,000. Both gone before Laura ever told me to sign anything. My hand trembled as I reached for another page. February 3rd, $15,000 transferred out. My chest tightened. Why would I have authorized that? I hadn't. I leaned back in the chair, the buzzing light now roaring in my ears. Spread across the desk, the papers no longer looked like numbers. They looked like evidence. I picked up a pen, circled each suspicious line, whispering under my breath the way I used to when counting the register at the bakery. 75, 20, 15, over $100,000 gone before she ever changed the locks. I whispered again, this time louder. She was bleeding me dry before I even left the house. The neon sign outside flashed pink against the blinds, cutting the room into shadow and light. I reached for the phone and dialed the only number I trusted. "Ellen," I whispered when she answered. My voice cracked. "I need your help." "It's Laura. She's stolen from me." I think she forged everything. Ellen's voice was calm, steady, the way only a lawyer could be, but also the way a friend speaks when she knows you're standing at the edge. "Margaret, keep everything you have. Every statement, every note. Don't throw a single thing away. Tomorrow morning you bring it all to my office. We'll go through it together." I closed my eyes. For the first time since Laura slammed the door in my face, I felt something different. It wasn't peace, it wasn't safety, it was fire. Ellen's office was quiet except for the shuffle of papers. I sat stiff in the chair while she read line after line, her pen circling words, her jaw tightening with every page. Finally, she looked up at me. "Margaret, she didn't just trick you. She built this." She tapped the stack of documents with her pen. "Your daughter set up a scheme." My throat closed. "What do you mean, a scheme?" Ellen slid one document toward me. "This is a power of attorney form. On its face, it looks legitimate. Your signature, a notary stamp. But look closely at the date." She pointed at the corner. "This is dated March 5th. You told me Laura brought you those papers in mid-April." I frowned. "Then how could it—" "She backdated it," Ellen said flatly. "That's fraud." "And with this form, she had the authority to access your accounts, change titles, even sign contracts in your name." I stared at the paper, my own name, written by my hand, yet twisted into a weapon against me. Ellen pulled out another page from the folder. And here, this was presented as an estate planning packet. The cover page is real, standard language about avoiding probate. But the 5th page, look. She circled a paragraph. "This isn't estate planning. This is a quitclaim deed. You signed away your house." Hidden in the middle of a stack of boilerplate legal text, I gripped the arms of the chair. My mind reeled back to that day. Laura's calm voice, her hand guiding mine with the pen. "Do you trust me?" And me, nodding, signing. Ellen's voice cut through. "And at the bank, she used these forged documents to move money. 75,000 here, 20,000 there, to a cashier's check, likely to accounts you don't even know exist. To the bank it looked valid. They had paperwork with your signature." I pressed my hand against my chest, feeling my heart pound. She planned it. All of it. Yes, Ellen said, piece by piece. She didn't just change the locks one day out of spite. She laid the groundwork, months of manipulation, creating a paper trail to make it look like you gave her everything willingly. I closed my eyes, the buzzing fluorescent lights above me spinning. For weeks I had been asking myself how I could have been so blind. Now I saw it. I wasn't blind. I was ambushed. Ellen leaned forward, her tone firm. Margaret, what Laura did is more than betrayal. It's elder fraud, power of attorney abuse, and theft. She could face prison for this. But only if we fight. I opened my eyes, the fire in me burning hotter than the shame. Then let's fight. And for the first time since losing my home, I didn't feel small. I felt like the woman who had once stood in a bakery at 4 a.m, turning flour and grief into something that could feed a town. This time I wasn't kneading dough, I was kneading justice. Ellen's office smelled faintly of ink and paper, the kind of place where decisions stuck. She moved with quick precision, flipping through forms, her pen scratching signatures that seemed to pierce the silence. I sat across from her, watching her work, trying to ignore the tremor in my hands as I sipped lukewarm coffee from a chipped mug. Outside the window, downtown moved on as if nothing had happened, buses groaning past, a man selling pretzels on the corner. But inside, every second felt like a countdown. Ellen dialed one number after another, her voice calm and clipped. Yes, freeze the account under the name Laura Sullivan. Yes, urgent potential elder abuse case. Yes, we have notarized evidence. I held my breath, listening to her words weave a net around my daughter. For a moment, nothing happened. Just the scratch of her pen, the steady hum of the heater, the sound of papers sliding into neat stacks. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, her lips curving slightly. That was the bank, she said, turning the screen toward me. Laura just tried to move $50,000. The transaction was denied. All accounts are frozen pending investigation. The words struck like thunder. After weeks of being powerless, for the first time, the ground shifted back beneath my feet. Ellen leaned forward, her eyes sharp. This is step one. She'll feel it immediately. Expect a call, and sure enough, as if the universe had been waiting, my phone lit up on the desk. Laura's name glowed across the screen. Insistent, angry. I stared at it, my pulse loud in my ears. Ellen raised her brow, giving a small nod. Answer if you want, she said quietly. But remember, you're not the victim anymore. You're the one holding the cards. The phone kept buzzing, the sound filling the small office until it felt like the whole room pulsed with it. And for the first time since she threw me out, I wasn't afraid of what Laura had to say. I was ready. The phone vibrated on Ellen's desk, Laura's name glowing on the screen. I picked it up, pressed it to my ear. For a moment, there was only silence. Then her voice came, sweet, careful, like a daughter who had suddenly remembered how to sound like one. Mom, thank God you answered. Listen, something strange happened at the bank today. They said the accounts were frozen. It has to be a mistake. Maybe some paperwork got mixed up. I let her words hang in the air. She filled the silence, rushing on. Mom, I know you've been upset, but you don't need to get outsiders involved. A lawyer, really? Why would you do that? Don't you trust me? The word lawyer made her voice waver. I could hear the edge of panic underneath the sweetness. She was scared. I did what I had to do, I said quietly. Her breath caught. Mom, please. I've always looked out for you. When Dad died, I was the one who helped you handle things. Do you remember that? I moved back in after my divorce so you wouldn't be alone. I sacrificed my career, my freedom, for you. I swallowed hard. Once I would have believed her. Once those words would have made me ache with guilt. But now I heard them differently, heavy with calculation, not love. You didn't sacrifice for me, I said. You moved in because it was convenient. Her voice sharpened instantly. So this is what it's about? You think I used you? Mom, you don't understand how money works, how paperwork works. That's why I handled it. And that's why over $100,000 left my account before I ever stepped out of my house? I asked. There was a long pause. I could almost hear her breath falter. Where did you hear that? She demanded. I didn't hear it, I said. I read it. In my bank statements. With my lawyer, she went silent again, but this time the mask slipped. When she spoke, the sweetness was gone. So you're letting some lawyer poison you against your own daughter? Mom, you've never been good with numbers. You don't even understand half of what you signed. You think you can fight me on this? Do you know what you've started?" The line trembled with her anger. I held the phone steady, my own voice calm, almost too calm. "I know exactly what I've started." And for the first time, it was her voice, not mine, that cracked. I let the silence stretch, long enough for Laura to feel it pressing on her chest. When I spoke again, my voice was low but steady, each word cut clear. "Laura, do you know why we are here? Why we've come to this moment with frozen accounts and forged papers between us? It's not because I didn't love you. It's because you stopped knowing what love even looks like." She tried to interrupt, her voice sharp, but I pressed on, stronger. "I woke at 4 every morning for 40 years. My hands cracked from flour, my knees swollen from standing. I sold cinnamon rolls for 99 cents so other families could celebrate their children's birthdays. And every dollar I earned, every ache I carried, went to you, to braces, to proms, to college. I lived so you wouldn't feel hunger, and now you use that same money to throw me out of my own home." She hissed through the phone. "I did it to protect our future." "No." My voice cut her off. "You did it to protect your greed. Because somewhere along the way you decided money mattered more than people. You traded family for equity. You stopped being a daughter and started being a banker with my name on your checks." Her breath quickened. I could almost picture her pacing, clutching her phone, the mask of control slipping. "You think you've been clever, Laura," I continued, "but cleverness built on cruelty always collapses. You thought I was too weak, too old, too blind. You forgot who raised you. You forgot that I survived burying your father with $3,800 in the bank and still built a business from nothing. Do you really think I can't survive you?" Silence. Just the sound of her breath, jagged, uneven. I felt something shift inside me then. Not just anger, not just hurt, something like clarity. "You didn't just steal money. You stole trust. You stole the bond between a mother and daughter. And when you lose that, Laura, you've already lost everything. More than 5 million. More than 33. You lost me. I let that hang. Heavy. Irreversible." Her voice broke at last, small, desperate. "Mom, please, don't do this." But I already had. I pressed the button, ended the call, and set the phone down gently on Ellen's desk. For the first time in months, my hands didn't shake. My voice hadn't cracked. I had looked at the woman who once called me a burden and shown her the truth. I was the one who endured, who survived, who still stood. The lesson was clear, for her and for me both. When greed replaces love, family ceases to exist. And when you try to strip away everything from someone who has already survived loss, all you create is their resolve. I hadn't just won against Laura. I had won back myself. The morning started quiet at the Sunset Inn. I sat at the small round table by the window, drinking thin coffee from a styrofoam cup. The neon sign outside buzzed, casting pink light across the peeling wallpaper. For a moment, it almost felt like any other day. Then Ellen came through the door, her heels clicking against the worn carpet. She didn't speak at first, just laid a folded newspaper in front of me. The headline made my stomach twist. "Daughter seeks guardianship over elderly mother." My name was right there, printed in black and white. Beneath it, Laura's statement. "My mother has become confused and easily manipulated since my father's death. She doesn't understand the complexity of financial decisions. I only want to protect her from those who would take advantage." I stared at the page until the letters blurred. The walls of the motel room felt like they were pressing in, suffocating me. For a moment, shame crept up my throat. Was this how the world would see me now? As a frail woman, too broken to handle her own life? But then the shame shifted into something else. Anger. No, not just anger. Clarity. I looked at Ellen. She wants to erase me. To make me legally invisible, Ellen's voice was calm but hard. Guardianship is a power grab. If she wins, you lose everything. Not just the house, not just the money. Your voice, your rights, your independence. I clenched the newspaper in my hands until the edges tore. Then I won't let her win. If she wants to drag me into the public, then I'll tell the public the truth. That night, I sat across from a young reporter in the motel's dim breakfast room, the hum of the vending machine in the corner filling the silence between us. Her recorder blinked red. She leaned forward, expectant. So I began. I told her about the bakery, How I woke at 4 in the morning for 40 years. How I baked 200 cinnamon rolls before the sun rose. How I priced them at 99 cents so no child would go without a birthday treat. I told her about burying Robert with $3,800 to my name and still finding a way to pay for Laura's braces, for her prom dress, for her future. The reporter's pen scratched furiously against her pad. My voice shook at first, but the more I spoke, the steadier it became. I built something from nothing, I said. I carried my daughter with me every step of the way. And now she says I don't understand money, that I can't think for myself. I've been thinking for myself since the day I buried my husband, and I will not stop now. When the story aired, the response was immediate. Letters arrived at Ellen's office, handwritten notes from old customers. She made my first birthday cake. She gave me bread when I couldn't afford to pay. Strangers left flowers at the motel. Neighbors I hadn't spoken to in years called, their voices thick with outrage. We believe you, Margaret. Don't let her silence you, the public had chosen. Laura wanted to paint me as weak, incompetent. Instead, the world saw me as what I had always been, a woman who stood up even when her knees were breaking. And for the first time, I felt something new rising in me, not just anger, not just survival, it was strength. The gavel struck once, sharp as a gunshot. This court is now in session. Every head turned. Reporters filled the back rows, their pens poised. Flashbulbs burst like lightning before the bailiff barked for silence. I sat at the plaintiff's table beside Ellen, my hands folded tightly in my lap. Across the aisle, Laura smoothed her blazer, her lips pressed into a perfect smile, as if she were the victim here. Her lawyer stood first, tall and polished. His voice dripped with practiced sympathy. Your Honor, this case is not about fraud. It is about compassion. My client, Laura Sullivan, has been caring for her elderly mother who is, let's be honest, grieving, unstable, and incapable of managing complex finances. These documents were not coerced. They were signed willingly by a woman too confused to understand them. My client simply stepped in to protect the estate as any loving daughter would. The words cut like acid, grieving, unstable, incapable. He wanted to reduce me to a shadow, a confused old woman who didn't know her own name. I sat straighter. My eyes didn't waver. Ellen rose. She didn't need theatrics. Her voice was calm, sharp, surgical. Your Honor, opposing counsel would like you to believe this is a story of a loving daughter and a confused widow. Let us look at the facts. She crossed to the evidence table and lifted the first exhibit. Bank statement, March 12th. $75,000 wired out. March 27th, $20,000 withdrawn. February 3rd, $15,000 transferred. All of these transactions occurred before the alleged estate planning session. Who benefited? Not Margaret Sullivan. All funds went into accounts controlled by Laura Sullivan. She dropped the papers onto the judge's bench. The sound echoed like a verdict already spoken. Next came the so-called estate planning packet. Ellen flipped through page by page, then stopped, jabbing her finger at the middle. Here, buried between standard boilerplate about probate and taxes, is a quitclaim deed, an outright transfer of the family home into Laura Sullivan's name. Not explained, not highlighted, hidden. That, Your Honor, is fraud by concealment. The judge leaned forward, his brow furrowing. And finally, Ellen said, holding up another sheet, the power of attorney form. It claims to be notarized on March 5th, but Margaret did not meet with her daughter until mid-April. That is not estate planning. That is forgery. Laura's lawyer leapt to his feet. Objection. Counsel is editorializing. The judge raised his hand. Overruled. Continue. Ellen's voice sharpened, every syllable a hammer. This is not confusion. This is construction. A systematic effort to strip an elderly woman of her assets, her home, and her autonomy. The defense claims Margaret Sullivan is unstable. I present to you 40 years of tax returns filed accurately, a bakery run profitably, a business sold for $5 million, all managed by this woman. Confused? Incapable? The record says otherwise. For a moment, silence filled the courtroom. Reporters' pens scratched furiously, Laura's face flushed red, her hands twisting in her lap. The judge adjusted his glasses, scanning the stack of evidence in front of him. His gavel tapped once. This court finds that the transfers were unlawful. Full ownership of the residence, financial accounts, and all associated assets returned to Margaret Sullivan immediately. Furthermore, the conduct of Laura Sullivan constitutes fraud, abuse of power of attorney, and elder financial exploitation. The matter will be referred for criminal prosecution. The gavel struck again. Final. Absolute. I closed my eyes. For weeks I had been erased, shoved aside, painted as weak. And now, in the cold silence of a courtroom, my truth had been written into law. I wasn't just a widow in a motel anymore. I was Margaret Sullivan, the woman who built a life, who survived betrayal, and who had just taken it all back. The house was quiet again. Not the hollow quiet of loss, but the kind of quiet that lets you breathe. In the kitchen, sunlight spilled across the counter I had chosen myself, warm and golden, as if the house was finally recognizing me. Sometimes, when I stand there stirring a pot of soup, I remember my daughter's voice, sharp, demanding, the way she told me to check out. Now she lives behind steel doors and gray walls. She writes me letters from time to time. I don't open them. A daughter who used my trust as a weapon cannot rebuild that bond with ink on paper. The silence between us is the only truth left. My husband Robert lingers here too, but differently. When I pass the roses blooming by the porch, I hear his laugh, feel the weight of his hand in mine. For years, I thought his memory was a chain. Now it's a lantern. He always said I could endure anything. He wasn't wrong. And Ellen, she comes often, sometimes with case files, sometimes with nothing but her steady presence. We share coffee at the table, two women who fought storms and stayed standing. She tells me I'm stronger than I know, and for once, I believe her. Last month, I spoke at the opening of the foundation. A room full of faces looked up at me, some worn with age, some lit with hope. Women who had carried families on their backs, just like I did. I told them, "You are not weak. You are not burdens. You are the backbone of this world, and no one has the right to strip you of your dignity." Their applause rose like thunder, and I felt something I hadn't in years, seen, not invisible. At night, I paint. Robert's old study smells of oil and turpentine now. One canvas holds a tray of cinnamon rolls, another a storm breaking over a house that still stands. And then, the self-portrait. A woman bathed in light, her face steady, her eyes unafraid. I step onto the porch at dusk. The sky burns orange and violet, the oaks tall and quiet around me. This house holds echoes, Laura's laughter as a child, Robert's footsteps, but they no longer wound. They remind. 40 years of sacrifice almost ended in silence. But here I am, still standing, not erased, not forgotten, rewritten in my own hand. I think back to the night Laura stood at the doorway, her arms crossed, her voice cold as stone. "Mom, you've signed everything. This is my house now. You need to check out." And I remember the day I sat in court listening as Ellen laid the truth bare. This is not confusion. This is construction. A systematic effort to strip a woman of her assets, her home and her dignity. Those were the moments I thought would break me. But instead they became the fire that forged me. I stand here now, not as the widow who packed her life into 2 suitcases, not as the mother cast aside, but as a woman who reclaimed her name, her home, her future. This is what freedom looks like at 67. A kitchen painted in colors I chose, a foundation built in my name, a life no longer defined by sacrifice alone, but by strength. They tried to write me out of my own story. But I am the one holding the pen. And if there is one truth I want every woman to remember, whether she is 27 or 77, it is this. You are not a burden. You are not disposable. You are the backbone, the builder, the survivor. And the world will remember you when you choose to remember yourself.